Today we're going to continue with our series that we started last week and that we are calling Hear My Voice, and all about identity, freedom, and calling. Last week we talked about why do we need to hear God's voice. Today our title is, what does God sound like? What does He sound like? And I've got 4 points for you today. The very first thing that the enemy questioned in Scripture was actually hearing God.
That's right.
The very first thing. That was his grand entrance into the world. The very first thing that he did, at least in creation. We know he did some things before. But in this creation, this is the very first thing that he did, to question hearing God. Many people say, well, yes, he questioned the word of God. And yes, that is correct. But Adam and Eve did not have a book. They didn't have a Torah scroll. They had what they had just heard from the Lord. So what the enemy began to question was hearing God. Their ability to distinguish and to recognize the word, the voice of God. Therefore, our title today, what does He sound like? So that we know it is Him. Hearing God faces a lot of opposition. That's why you, in your hearing God, and me, in my hearing God, we face a lot of opposition, a lot of confusion. The reason is because hearing God is so crucial to God and to us. It is so crucial that God put it in the very first and most important commandment. Shema Israel.
Yeah.
Hear, Israel. I want you to hear. Hear my voice. That's how important the hearing God is, that the Lord put it in the very most important commandment. And therefore, it is of primary importance to us. Because without hearing His voice, we can't love Him. We can't follow Him. Therefore, the enemy focuses a lot of attention in disrupting our hearing of the voice of God. But many people question, well, is it an audible voice? Yeah? When somebody says, well, the Lord spoke to me and the Lord said to me, immediately it's like, well, was that an audible voice? Or, who are you? Did God come and meet with you to your house and He speaks to you? I'm not sure about your mental stability. And it is true, especially true in Texas, where we hear people doing a lot of crazy things in the name of God told me. Some of them are actually very sad. But that's such a small percentage of the people who claim to hear God. But it throws everything into question. I think a better question actually is, rather than did you hear an audible voice, I think a better question is God's voice audible to the physical ears or in your spirit? And I'll give you an example. Have you ever heard the voice of your conscience? Yes. Does our conscience, do our consciences have a voice? Yes. Are you mentally unstable because you hear the voice of your conscience? No. Quite the opposite, right? You see, we attribute that to our conscience. And we don't even think about it. We don't question it. So it's not a physical, audible voice, but it is a voice. The conscience is not the voice of God, though. It can be, but it is not always, because we know the conscience can be wrong.
Yes.
Have you ever seen how animal rights people are the same ones that support abortion?
Yeah.
you see, their conscience is right in one area. It is good to not harm animals.
Yeah.
Oh, but save the dogs, save the puppies, but not the babies.
Amen.
Where is your conscience? So the conscience is definitely not the voice of God, but it is a voice.
Amen.
And it helps us understand how we hear God. We hear his voice. Not in a physical way, but we hear it inside of us. And let me tell you 3 ways in which we hear the voice of God. Everybody hears God in these 3 ways. You either receive a visual, you receive a sense, or you receive a thought, a word, a sentence. Sometimes even just one word. You either get a visual, a sense, or a word. All of us have the ability to hear God in all 3 ways. But the way that the Lord created each one of us individually determines that we hear him more in one of these 3 ways than the other 2. Me, I'm more of a sensing kind of a person. Yes, sometimes I get a visual. Sometimes I get a word or a sentence. But most of the time, I sense something. And I'm able to put into words what I'm sensing. So I can say, well, the Lord showed me, the Lord said to me, the Lord spoke to me. But what it was is he put a sense in me because that's how he created me. And for you, it probably is that way, or maybe in one of the other 2 ways. Let me tell you, one time I was kind of struggling. I was confessing to the Lord, and I was kind of struggling. You know how it is. Sometimes the Lord is faster to forgive us than we are to forgive ourselves.
Amen.
Or to actually receive his forgiveness more properly. And so I asked the question, Lord, do you have a way to show me that you've forgiven me? What's a way for you to show me? And it's a wonderful question. I recommend you to practice this and ask the Lord, Lord, can you show me a way in which you can show me that you've forgiven me? And immediately, he gave me a visual. Now, here's how I'm going to tell it to you. What happened is that the Lord gave me a hug. The Lord gave me a hug. Now, if I go around and tell people, if I go to Oprah and I say, God gave me a hug, I'm not sure this is going to go down well. They may actually edit that part.
Yeah.
They may be getting ready to, I don't know, I'm going to call the police. I mean, really, did God come to you? Who are you? That God would come and give you a hug. But I'll tell you, if I rephrase it in a different way, then you'll find it, you'll kind of say, well, yeah, I can see that. Because what happened is that the Lord gave me a visual. And in that visual, I saw him embracing me. And it felt so real because I'm a sensing person. I felt his acceptance and his forgiveness and his love, and he was okay with me, more than okay. And so he spoke to me in that way. You see how it's more palatable, so to speak, right? So it helps to understand it in those terms, because who wants to go around talking and say, well, God spoke to me? Yeah, but you can say, well, I don't know, I was praying and I think the Lord showed me a visual of something. And he can do this to you in many ways. Give you a sense for something. And you can test that out and try it out. So we're going to talk today about how to recognize his voice. How can we tell when it is him? What does he sound like? So let me show you 4 ways that we're able to recognize His voice? Well, first of all, God's voice is the voice of life. This is the number one way that you can recognize that it is the Lord speaking to you. Because His voice sounds like life. See, the problem is that we're told that there are three voices, right? There's the voice of God, the voice of the enemy, and my own voice. Okay, so here's the thing. When I hear something good, I know it's not the enemy. I know it's God. But if I hear something bad, I know it's not God. I know it's the enemy. But what about me then? You see, I either line up with one or the other. So in reality, there are only two voices, good and evil. That sounds like Bible.
Amen.
There's the voice of life and the voice of death. God's voice sounds like life. So there is no third voice. I am either attached to one source or to another. So I can speak good. This is what the book of James says. I can speak good or I can speak evil. I can speak attached to the fountain of death or the fountain of life. So it simplifies things. There are two voices, the voice of God, of life, and the voice of death, of the enemy. So the voice of God is the voice of life. Let me show you a verse that is, it's a great passage. It's a great verse. It's a great truth there that is not preached or taught very, very often. And it is in 1 Corinthians 15. Verse 25, it says, "For He must reign," this is God, "God must reign until He, God, has put all His enemies," see, it's plural, He has more than one enemy, "all His enemies under His feet." Verse 26, "The last enemy that will be abolished is death." Now you would expect us to read there is Satan. He's not the last enemy. He's not the ultimate enemy. You see, even Satan serves death. He has a master. His master is death. When he speaks and death comes, he is a channel of death. Death is not a person, but it is God's enemy. And the reason is this. God is life. Yeshua said, "I am the resurrection and the life." When God says, "I am that I am," it means I exist on my own. I am life. God is life. And His ultimate enemy is death. So when we hear lies that come through the father of lies, Satan, they actually produce death. The ultimate enemy is death. That is what God is trying to defeat in us. He did it at the cross. In our position in Messiah, He has already defeated death on our behalf. He will resurrect us, and so therefore He will defeat death in our future. And in our constant walk, He is delivering us in the process of sanctifying us, which is filling us with life to defeat death. And so speaking and hearing His voice is a crucial and essential part of being sanctified, of being filled with life to defeat death, so that Messiah can live in us and through us. So the voice of God sounds like the voice of life. So how can I tell if what I'm hearing is God? The voice of God sounds like life. All right. Let's unpack that a little bit, because that's like, yeah, it's great. It's up here, right? But let's bring it to our daily lives. What does that mean? How do I walk this out? How can I really, truly tell that I'm hearing God in the everyday, when I'm driving around and when I'm buying groceries and yelling at my kids? No, I didn't say that. Well, let me tell you this. If what I see, right, if the visual I receive, if the sense I have, if the thoughts and the words produce in me and through me, if what comes to me and through me is love, then I know it's life. If what I hear produces joy in me, then I know what I'm hearing is life. If it produces peace, shalom, rather than controversy and confusion and dissension, then I know I'm hearing life. If what I hear, what I sense, what I see produces patience with other people. Let me put it this way. Patience with other drivers. Then I know I'm hearing the voice of life. I know I'm hearing God. If it produces compassion, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, you probably identify where I'm getting these from, don't you? The fruit of the Spirit. Yes, you were going to say that, right? I should have let you. Next time. The Spirit of God produces life, and He speaks life to us. And so I feel this life, this shalom and joy and love and peace and compassion and did I say self-control? Yes. You see, when I stand in front of the pantry, a voice tells me, don't eat that. I believe it's the voice of God. I'm trying to put life into your physical body. Okay, enough of that. Now, on the other hand, you know where I'm going to go with this. If what I hear, what I sense, what I see leads me to experience, either in myself or through me, if it leads me to experience anger, sadness instead of joy, depression instead of shalom, then I know, this is not the voice of life. I do this all the time. I say, Lord, is it you creating this feeling in me? Is it you making me feel this way? Immediately, gotcha. No. I had a suspicion where it was coming from. But rather than me trying to determine, I ask a simple question. Is it you, Father, really making me feel this way? Nope. Gone. It works all the time. Gone. I don't need to struggle with it. I don't need to fight it. It's not a hand-on-hand combat and maybe I'm going to win. Maybe he's going to win. He's gone. And I'm free. The voice of death creates these feelings in us: anger, unforgiveness, heartbreak, disappointment. Have you ever felt disappointed? Yeah. Ask the Lord. Father, is this you making me feel this way about this other person? No, child. And you may actually experience compassion, forgiveness. Amazing. The voice of God lead us to experience life.
Amen.
The very thing that he died for.
Hallelujah.
In practical, this is rubber meets the road type of walk. So the Lord wants you and me to develop the skill of discerning the voice of life and also the voice of death. You see, the original design was for us to depend on him to tell us what is good and what is evil, what is life and what is death. Let's go back to the garden and live that way. Number 2, God's voice is the voice of a father, always. If what you hear, what you see, what you sense makes you feel orphan, that's not the Father. If it makes you feel abandoned, it's not the Father. His voice is the voice of a father. What is a father anyway? Have you ever asked that question? What is a father anyway? Well, a father is one who in Scripture is compared to the columns of a house. The strength of fathers provide the structure and the stability that we need. The family can rest in the strength, in the structure and stability that the father provides. So, the voice of God as a father speaks strength. It does not weaken you. It strengthens you. That's the voice of the Father. And when he speaks strength, he gives you structure. He speaks identity. You see, when you know who you are a stable person. You can be anywhere and you're comfortable in your own skin. You can walk with confidence. You're not an orphan. Your Father is with you.
Amen.
The voice of God is the voice of a father. And he provides structure to your life and stability through identity. Wow. You walk in the power of the Spirit of God. In the humility of the Spirit of God. In the love of the Spirit of God. You're not depressed. You're not self-centered. You're not sad about your own situation. You can love others. You hear the voice of God as a father. The number one thing that God speaks, the Father speaks, is identity. Identity. You are. You are. Identity. That's what he speaks. So we recognize his voice because his voice speaks identity, it gives structure, and it gives stability. Number 3. God's voice is the voice of a brother. It's the voice of a brother. Let me tell you about this. You know this story, John 8, beginning in verse 3. It says, the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery, and having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in adultery in the very act. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. But then But, I'm sorry. What do you say? What then do you say? Verse 6. They were saying this, testing him, so that they might have grounds for accusing him. But Yeshua stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. But when they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." Let me tell you real quick. Did I pass this verse? I think I passed it a while back. Let me tell you, he wasn't saying, if you have no sin since the time that you were born, then you can throw the stone. That's not what he was saying. That wouldn't have really teeth, that kind of an argument. But what he was saying is, if you, in the process of catching this woman, committed no sin, if you're free of sin in this very thing that you're doing, then go ahead. You know why? Where was the man? If she was caught in the act, there had to have been a man. Where is he? See, they set her up to set him up. They were full of sin. They knew it. And when he asked, they couldn't say a word. And they left. They left her. Here's my point. The voice of God, Yeshua, when he spoke to this poor girl, it was the voice of a brother. Yeah. What is a brother anyway? Yeah. Have you ever asked that question? What is a brother? Yeah. You see, a brother is one who defends you. Yes. One who is like a wall. You're in the inside, protected. He is in the outside, facing everything outside, the elements. He tells your enemies, you back off. This is my little brother, my little sister. That's what Yeshua did. That's the voice of God too. He speaks to you like a brother. Maybe even like a big sister. If you can handle that. It's the voice of a defender. And we can rest. Sometimes God speaks that way. It's amazing. You know, and Michelle knows I've shared this with her, and it's great. And the Lord taught me one time to discern, okay, God, how are you speaking to me? Are you speaking to me like a father or like a brother? And it's amazing. Because when he speaks identity, okay, he's speaking to me like a father. But when he speaks in your defense, like a brother, big brother, ready to fight and defend you, you're like, oh yes, this is Yeshua. This is my brother. My God, who is my brother, speaking to me and defending me from the enemies that are trying to get me down and all of this. All right, let's see if you can handle this one. I'm going to test you here. Let's see, okay. I'm going to test you on this one. Number 4, God's voice is the voice of a mother. I don't know if you read The Shack or seen the movie. You may have a problem with this. That's not where I'm going. Whether you feel one way or another, I'm not going to tell you which way I felt, but I learned a lot when I read the book. So.
Yeah, me too.
But besides that point, let me ask you, have you ever asked the question, what is a mother anyway? What is a mother anyway? Well, you see, a mother is one whose arms hold the family together. The arms, why the arms? Because it's through her work and through her love. Through the things she does and the embrace, she holds the family together. That's why a guy can't do it alone. So when God speaks like a mother, he is embracing. Remember I told you he gave me a hug? It's a guy thing when he can hug another guy. Showing a side of God that was always meant to be for us guys. It is a sign of emotional health. That's what that is. God created fathers. He created mothers. He created the love of a father and the love of a mother. You see, the arms of a mother, they nurture and they comfort and they teach. You ever thought of that? A mother teaches. A mother teaches Torah. Have you ever thought of that? Watch this. Proverbs 1:8. Hear, my son, your father's instruction. Yes, do this. Do it this way. Don't do it that way. All right, I'm being stereotypical, right? But watch this. And do not forsake your mother's teaching. But the word teaching in the Hebrew is Torah. Whoa, and you thought that the dad is the one that teaches the Torah. Wow, what do you have here now? So the mother needs to know the Torah, teach it to the children. The truth is that both of them, mom and dad, they teach Torah, but they teach it from a different angle that actually complements the child's nurturing and education. You see, the number one thing that God speaks, when God speaks like a mother, is the Spirit of God speaking. Because what he does is he speaks the details. Mothers provide the details. Father says, do this, do it now. Mother says, come here, son. Let me show you. This is how you do it. This is how you put it together. And the child feels the structure of the dad and the instruction of the mom. Mom fills the details. And it's all complemented. God in himself has both. See, God the Father instructs us, and the Spirit of God takes us at every turn over here, say this, don't say that. What you did, the way you said it, it was not good. Makes you feel a little bad, but not too much. Picks you up right up. It's the Spirit of God mothering you and me. So we hear his voice sounds like a mother. At times like a brother. At times like a father. But always is the voice of life.
Amen.
The voice of life. Amen. Let's pray. Abba, we're so enriched by your word. Thank you for your instruction. Spirit of God, thank you for your instruction. For showing us the details. And Yeshua, thank you for protecting us. Thank you for the fellowship that we have as peers, as brothers and sisters. Model after you, discipling the apostles. Lord, thank you. Thank you. Bless our congregation. Bless us. Bless each family, each home, each person. That your shalom will be our wall around us. And the Spirit of God lead us every step of the way. In Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen. Amen.